Hello, everybody. We're just going to wait one more minute just to let some people trickle in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. At this time, I am calling to order this meeting of the Undergraduate Senate at 7:38 p.m. Will our acting clerk call the roll?
Yes, okay. Senator Bennett. Is Senator Bennett here? Senator Hagen.
Here.
Senator Hendricks. Senator Hendricks here? No. Senator Henson.
Here.
Senator Morinville. Senator Morinville here? No. Senator Erkam. When? Okay, Senator Nguyen. Senator Nguyen here?
Here. Not sure which one.
Taylor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Senator O'Fay. Senator O'Fay? No. Senator Parapali. Senator Parapali? No. Senator Pierce.
Here.
Senator Womble. Senator Womble? No. Our speaker is here. Senator Kim.
Here.
Senator Stanton. Senator
Here.
Stanton, yes.
Here.
I am here. Senator Guskowitz. Senator Guskowitz. No. Senator Jones.
Here.
Senator, yes. Senator Vernon. Senator
Here.
Vernon, yes. Senator Wilson.
Here.
Senator, yes. Senator Alexander. Senator Alexander here? No. Senator Brandon. Is Senator Brandon here? No. Senator Grimm, Chair Grimm. Is Chair Grimm here? No. Senator Manna. Is Senator Manna here? No. Senator McDermott. Is Senator McDermott here? Yes. Senator Nanduri. Is Senator Nanduri here?
Here.
Yes. Is Senator Smith here? Senator
Here.
Smith. Yes. Senator Sodano. Is Senator Sodano here? No. Is Senator Flynn? Is Senator Flynn here? Senator Langley. Senator Langley here.
Here.
Yes. Is Senator Longo? Is Senator Longo here? No. Senator Aurora.
Here.
Is Senator, yes. Senator Ertl is not here. Is Senator Jessup? Is Senator Jessup here? No. Chair McClanahan, yes.
Here.
Senator Palakuri. Is Senator Palakura here? No. Senator Schneider. Yes. You can see.
Here.
Chair Vespute. Is Chair Vespute here? No.
Present.
Senator Adams.
I think Chair Vespute was present.
Yes,
okay.
Chair Vespute is present.
All right, cool. Senator Adams.
Here.
Yes. Chair Baruch is also here. Senator Jane. Senator Jane here. No. Senator Leonard. Senator Leonard here. Yes. And finally, Senator Pollock. Is Senator Pollock here? No. Mr. Speaker, it does appear that we do have quorum.
Thank you, Acting Clerk Forbes. Seeing as we have a quorum present, we will proceed with the rest of our agenda. The first item being the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Is there a motion with regards to the adoption of the minutes?
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
There hearing no objection, the minutes from the previous meeting stand adopted. We will now move into the report to our reports, starting with mine. I have a few items to touch on. Firstly, I met with with some individuals from graduate student government last Friday to discuss proposed changes to the student constitution, which they seem broadly receptive to, and we're going to start some more in-depth communications about potential reforms going forward. You'll see on the agenda, there's a undergraduate constitution that's been placed on the consent calendar that will go on for a ballot referendum in the fall. In terms of like administrative updates, I have been working with our Speaker Pro Tem to finalize our staff application. We're hoping to have that out by the end of the month. And don't really have any other major updates at this time. So I will conclude my report there. Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, our Speaker Pro Tem isn't present. Finance Chair Vespute, do you have a report?
No reports just yet. We'll be scheduling our first Senate meeting, our first finance meeting very shortly. A couple things to discuss there, but nothing's gonna quite happen until kind of the end of this meeting.
Are there any questions for the Finance Chair? Seeing none, we'll move on to our report from our Rules and Judiciary Chair.
All right. So R&J met last Friday. Last Saturday, we reported a number of items favorably to the Senate. The only items we've reported without prejudice were those of nominees who were not able to make it, of which there are 2, and we'll be hearing those on the General Orders calendar tonight. In other news, most senators have passed the code test. Senators Morinville, Parapali, Ellis, Nanduri, and Aurora. You need to pass the code test before around next Tuesday, so you can actually vote on finance on amendments to the code. If you don't complete the test by then, you will not be able to vote on code amendments for the remainder of the term. So please do finish that test. If you have any questions about the test, please feel free to ask me right now or over email. Are there any questions? Seeing none.
Thank you. Let's see, our O&A Chair isn't present, so we'll move on to the report from our Ethics Chair. Or wait, is that a question for Chair McClanahan? Okay.
Sorry, it was my mistake.
Could you say that again?
Sorry, I raised my hand by mistake.
Oh, okay. All right, let's see. We'll move on with Chair Brute's report.
Hey y'all, just a couple of things. The ethics committee finally met last week. We elected our vice chair and discussed just kind of like what the roles of the ethics committee is in the upcoming year. The only main thing I want to talk about is please fill out the attendance form that your chairs and that Speaker Gary link on emails regarding your meetings. It is a lot easier for me to look at that form and reference meetings than have to comb through my email and check to see if somebody emailed me about missing a meeting. It'll make all of our lives a little bit easier. Other than that, this will be discussed a little bit later in the meeting, but if you did not pass the finance test, please work on passing that within the next 6 weeks, or you will not be allowed to, or 6 weeks since I emailed out about that, or you will not be able to vote on any finance legislation in the coming year, which is a pretty important part of what we do as the Senate. That'll be all.
Thank you, Chair Brook. Let's see, I don't believe our member at large is present. So we'll move on to our reports from our members of the Commission on Campus Equality and Student Equity. Let's see, Senators Alexander or Vernon, do y'all have anything to report?
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay then, so we will move on to our report from the student body president. Let's see, President Everett, you are recognized.
Yeah, thanks so much. Hope everyone's doing well and it's funny times the rest of summer. Apologies for my camera being off. I'm in my childhood bedroom, so I don't have a desk or anything to kind of set up camp on. Won't be before you long. So I spent some time getting some new folks in my office, which is very exciting. I'm looking forward to having the rest confirmed today, the cabinet nominations, fingers crossed. Just want to take a second to thank Chief of Staff Williams for all your work that you've done. Dedicated a lot of his time, a lot of his efforts to selecting such a strong cabinet. So excited to work with everyone. Right now, I'm looking forward to the next BOT meeting next month. I don't know the date necessarily, but I think it's about in a month or so. So looking forward to that. I'm building a lot of relationships with folks in UNC admin and connecting with TJ Edwards. He's the new chair of the Carolina Union Board of Directors, about how we can kind of support the union and bring some new voices to the table. Spending a good amount of time with Lauren Hawkinson, the graduate and professional student government president, and working with her to find some new ways to support graduate and professional students on campus. Also starting to have some policy conversations about what my administration will look like, but I'm still so excited to work with you all and to see you all very soon in person. I do have another meeting at 8, which I'm gonna have to hop off for, but I'll join right back on. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the student body president? If not, I have a couple. So my first question deals with the voter ID laws that are being considered by the NCGA right now. And I'm wondering if your administration has any plans to lobby to make sure that student IDs like one cards are included as an acceptable form of voter ID.
Yes, my executive manager, Everson Moran, has been on that, as well as Mariam Khan, my director of state and external affairs. We're in so many different conversations. We're actually planning on having an update from Mariam very soon about the process there, hoping to tie in some additional voices on campus, the Black student movement, some UNC admin to kind of see what we can do, but definitely that's a space we're hoping to get involved with very soon.
So thank you. And my second question relates to House Bill 574, which was just passed today. This is this law bans the participation of transgender students in sports. This law was extended to include university level athletics at public institutions, so UNC. And I'm wondering if your administration has any particular stance on this bill and has anything that they plan on doing regarding its passage.
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. I was very, very clear when I first ran my campaign was that equity and inclusion are at the forefront of everything that we do. And as this month being Pride Month, hoping to reach out to the LGBTQ Center about the efforts there, as well as, have an amazing director again, Mariam Khan for State and External Affairs, working with her to kind of see what we can do, as well as Snaya Pasapoulis also in the call as well. They're both working really hard. But yeah, I'm hoping to reach out to some invested parties and kind of advocate in that space as well, bring some conversations to the General Assembly if possible. Yeah, so I'm definitely 10 toes down on advocating for all groups and identities across campus.
Are there any other questions for the student body president? Seeing none, thank you for that report. Let's see. does our undergraduate vice president have a report?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Speaker Gary. Hi, everyone. It is great to see you all. It is about 2 a.m. my time right now, so bear with me. I have 4 main updates for you all, so I'm just going to run through those really quickly. The first is regarding external appointments, always external appointments. I'm in the process of auditing all of our boards and committees. So there are a handful of boards and committees that have not met since before COVID. So I'm reaching out to all of the different chairs, the faculty chairs for those committees, to ask what their plans are for the 23-24 academic year and make sure that they're still meeting. In that process, I'm also working with Speaker Gary to update the undergraduate student code so that we know what external appointments exist and who's in the process of overseeing them and making sure that they're like actually getting in place and actually meeting. So I've gone ahead and given myself the deadline of the middle of next week to get that first round open and available to everybody. And we're going to work with Secretary Taylor to publicize on the undergraduate student government Instagram. So if you're interested in applying to any of these external appointments, please look for more promotional materials in a week from today or a week from tomorrow, I guess, for you all. So we're going to figure out like what external appointments exist, which ones aren't really meeting, and how we can make them work a little bit better. Second, hardship parking. So the committee met in the last week of May. During our first meeting, I was appointed as chair of the committee, and then Katie Heath, the graduate student, was appointed as the vice chair of the committee. Everybody from hardship is delighted to be meeting tomorrow. We'll be meeting tomorrow at 6:30 to officially adopt the timeline for the 23-24 year academic year process. So basically, we're going to like set the dates for hardship, figure out when exactly everybody needs to get their applications in, and also set our dates for review. So if you have any questions about the hardship process, please feel free to reach out to me. You all should have my email. You can also definitely text me if you have questions about that process. I won't go into that right now, but we should have all of that information set and ready to go by tomorrow. I am like really trying to focus on making sure that everybody who wants to access hardship understands the process. So once we've adopted the timeline, I'm really going to like work with you all, work with the executive student government Instagram page to make sure that we're just like publicizing these resources, making sure that people can access them. Okay, and then the third thing is I met with the provost for the last week of May, and we discussed all the different things we're going to talk about for the provost advisory committee next year. A few highlights include getting some student voices involved in the School of Civic Life and Leadership, so bringing in more student voices to advise faculty in that process. And then also we were talking about an AI policy, so a standard AI policy for more of our faculty, which should be really interesting. So I'll definitely have more updates for you all as we get deeper into the semester regarding what sort of like stuff is being workshopped, what AI is going to look like, what university policy is going to look like there. And then oh yeah, and the very last thing is I also have staff. So I have 3 folks that have joined my office. They're absolutely fantastic. I know some of them are on the call. I don't know. Okay, well, it's Olivia, Kanala, and Tiana. And so they will be up on the exec branch website as we continue to update. And please, please, please reach out to any of them. They're absolutely wonderful, super up to date with everything that's going on in my office. They serve as proxies for me and as resources for you all and for anybody else who wants to work with the vice president's office. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for the vice president? All right, seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to our report from the undergraduate treasurer. Treasurer Brodsky, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's very hazardous for me to say. I'll try to be brief. So first, just talk about, we've got the fiscal year ending in 11 days. To my knowledge, there are very few, if any, still pending expenditures. I'm going to be double checking on that with the interim controller or the summer controller over the next few days. But to my knowledge, figures should be relatively final. I'll provide those figures to the Senate sometime after July 1. But those figures will be available to you all. But they should be very similar to the tentative figures that I presented last month. Yeah. I have prepared a new version of the treasurer's test That will be public for FY24. That will be published on or near July 1. Should be mostly very similar to the previous version of the treasurer's test, many of the same questions, slightly changed, but with some modifications, especially to meet the changes, under FRRA and hopefully access finance. So that's been done. Regarding the FY23 treasurer's test, just some overview for y'all. The median score on this ended up being a 72. This seems fine. People were allowed to take it multiple times. And I'm not sure, it was a little bit difficult for me to exactly figure out what, filtering for highest scores, what the median was, but from what I can tell, the majority of people who took it once eventually passed, even if it took them multiple times to pass. So seems good. And there's a pretty strong majority, like, 2/3 or so. And again, the new version will be pretty similar, at least in terms of difficulty, and often in terms of content. I was very excited to work with Senator Forbes and others on the Access Finance Act, which is, I believe, being heard on the consent calendar this evening. It's a very significant improvement to the Treasury laws, in my opinion. I think the FRRA kind of changed things systematically, but left in place a lot of the arcane, labyrinthine regulations that I think many people have come to despise about the finance code. So this cleans out a lot of that, makes a few adjustments, mainly to fix oversights in FRRA. And then, yeah, I think it'll be great. I'll call to the attention of the Senate that assuming this legislation is passed and signed, it will be the responsibility of the Senate to take up a budget resolution next month, which will decide essentially what share of the appropriations reserve the Senate is going to want to spend in the budget cycle, as opposed to leaving over to what's it called, subsequent appropriations. So that'll be proposed by the chair of Vespute, but that is something that the Senate is going to have in front of them next month. Yeah, I'm assuming that. And then I've been meeting with Chair Vespute and others just to sort of nail down what the schedule on the budget cycle is going to be. We need to wait for access finance to pass in order for us to schedule that, due to some weird legislative wonkiness. But once that's done, my expectation is that it will be a very early budget, and that we will have a budget pretty quick into the semester, which is great. It means organizations can get their money faster. So I'm looking forward to that. On a different note, I also have some changes going on in my office. I initially rolled over most of my staff from last term, but now there's some change. Cormac Lynch is departing. He's awaiting confirmation before the Joint Governance Council to the Board of Elections. So I am interviewing for the role of Chief of Staff starting this weekend. I've got some very promising applicants, and I'm looking forward to that. I've also hired Maddox Addy, who's a former member of the Undergraduate Senate, and Stephen Nuzolo, who was most recently Deputy Undergraduate Treasurer, to serve as Deputy Treasurers for External Affairs and Internal Affairs, respectively. For some insight on those roles, Mr. Addy will be responsible for mainly fee matters and university matters. And I have spoken with Vice President Siegel about, per the Joint Code, slotting him in as an executive assistant appointment to SFAC. So he will also, extremely likely, be serving on SFAC. I also and Mr. Nuzolo in turn will be responsible for liaising with the executive branch, and perhaps to some degree with the Senate. But to augment that, I will also be hiring a bursary assistant who will be a point man for me with a student controller. And all matters expenditure related, and then also a legislative coordinator who will be a designated staffer to help me with the Senate. So in general, in the macro, my intention is that my office be pretty exclusive to individuals with experience. If you know anyone who fits the bill there, please feel free to let them know. Just there should be information on, I think, the executive branch Instagram account, and as well as on the Heal Life page. In terms of SFAC, I need to follow up with some of the appropriate individuals on the graduate side, but my expectation is that it will be a busy fee review season this fall. I think that is it. I may have forgotten something. Happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions for the treasurer? Chair McClanahan.
I have more than one question, but I'll start with this. With regards to the code test, I myself and a number of senators have mentioned this. There have been some delays getting responses back from the code test. How do you have it set up on your end to return responses from the code test, not the code test, the finance test?
Yeah, this has been a matter of observation for some time. It's set up purposefully to be a manual release. The reason for this is that, from what I can tell, you cannot automatically release it without letting people see which questions they got wrong, which is not how the test is meant to be. So I have been manually releasing that during the school year. I had staff or myself updating that very regularly. Over the summer, that's kind of, fallen away a bit. So my apologies for that. To my knowledge, this has not ultimately at any point this year prevented someone from accessing anything, to my knowledge. But yeah, that is a shortcoming on my part over the last few weeks.
All right. Additionally, you mentioned that the timeline for the finalization of the budget, you expected that to be done much earlier in the semester than it otherwise would have been. Is that the case?
Well, specifically that, the Senate is given 8 weeks under the law to 8 weeks from FDOC to hear a budget. What I had discussed with Chair Vespute was essentially cramming in 8 weeks worth of budget hearings into about 2 weeks, and really working the finance committee for those 2 weeks in order to try and get an early budget.
That will be all, and I will say that sounds beneficial.
Any other questions for the treasurer? All right, I'm going to briefly ask one. Could you provide any update on the status of the student controller's position? I know that the previous controller, Eric Lee, graduated, and is that post currently filled? What are the long-term plans for that position, et cetera?
Yeah, so on an interim basis, that is filled by a summer controller. His name is Chase. Let me just double check on the last name. That's Chase. Hold on. I think it's. Give me a sec. It's there is an interim in the position. I'm sorry. I'll put the name in the chat after I'm done. But there is an interim in that position. Moving forward, the union is hiring a full-time professional controller. That job has been posted. I've had some Chase Pierce. Thank you, Quail. I thought Pierce, but I wasn't sure. There is a full-time professional controller position that job's been posted. I've had some concerns about some of the specifications of the posting, but I'm told that it is bound by UNC HR policy, so it's kind of a moot point. But that position will be hired for relatively soon. This is a big deal because it means that this person will be able to control a P card and make upfront purchases as part of their job for student organizations. So we're hopeful that that will make it easier for organizations to spend the money that they've been appropriated. So that's where we are in that position.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the treasurer? Seeing none, we'll move on to the report from the undergraduate chief of staff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be brief, just a few updates. The biggest thing that I've been focused on, which has involved a lot of the Senate, is confirming a cabinet. So I appreciate you, Speaker Gary, for answering some of my messages throughout this process. And thank you, Chair McClanahan, for making sure that it got onto the schedule so that it could be confirmations and the oath being administered at the end of this meeting. So that's been the focus. I also have an office built for myself that's happened during this whole application process. So the goal of what we were doing over this past month was to interview for cabinet and senior staff so that we could give co-directors ample time to plan and create a robust budget that we would hear internally within the executive branch before putting it before Senate, just so that we make sure that we check all bases there. So I'm excited in welcoming the nominees that will hopefully become those co-directors that are serving in the Everett administration. So excited about that, excited to finish that process tonight. Additionally, outside of senior staff and co-directors, had a meeting yesterday with the Dean of Students, Dean Rickenberg, and the Associate Provost for Student Aid and Scholarships, Associate Provost Copeland. This has been something that's been recurring, as you all may know. The Everett administration has a big focus on financial literacy and well-being. And with that, that also goes into UNC system goals that were set, trying to remember, not sure how many years ago, but that's one of the strategic initiatives for the UNC system. And under the Van administration, I was sort of the point person there, and went to the UNC Financial Literacy Symposium in Charlotte, and looked at Niner Finance, which is the financial literacy and well-being program in Charlotte, in hopes of bringing back something like that, but more encompassing at UNC. And met with Dean of Students and Associate Provost and got word that the school has funded the Center for Basic Needs, which is an all-encompassing program that will handle a four-pronged approach in handling food insecurity, housing insecurity, the Carolina Emerging Fund, and the financial literacy and well-being component as well. And with that, with that funding came they were able to fund a director and then 2 assistant directors, and will be working to post that position and fill in to build that program up. And over the next academic term, we'll be doing major planning. But it's a 3-year turnaround period to really get this Center for Basic Needs up and running. And that's sort of the interim name while a name is being developed. It'll be housed in SASB. And additionally, I met with them concerning food insecurity, specifically in the food pantry network that exists on our campus. And right now they're in the process of working to develop an app of sorts to essentially track all of the different pantries that exist in the different schools of UNC. The main goal is to create a streamlined network that can track the inventory for food items and other basic needs items that exist in each pantry. The goal is also to hire one, and this is pending approval from the UNC administration, but hire a staff member to manage the main the main food pantry that is being sought after. And with that, conversations are being had to try and have a central location for the pantry, and in addition to the pantries that are located across campuses, across the campus. But Carolina Union is the main place for that, just because that's the central location for campus. So conversations will be had to develop that in reference to President Everett's policy and picking off of some of the work that's already been done. But I'm excited to report that, especially since I was in a lot of the meetings and the planning processes when we were writing out budgets on napkins. And now to see that the center has been approved, and it's a huge step in creating an accessible Carolina for everyone. I'm really excited to report that. And also excited to report that I was asked to sit on the search committee for hiring the director for the center. I haven't gotten back with the Dean of Students on that just yet, just because I want to make sure that I can fully commit to putting to that sort of role. But just excited to report how this is moving and how we're making strides in that platform policy area. And I'm looking to update those co-directors on that, well, as they are ultimately confirmed, as we work to plan for the academic term. But that's all the updates I have. I thank you so much for bearing with me. I think that was brief. I hope so. I usually am a bit more long-winded, and the co-directors who I've been meeting with know that, but I won't do that to everyone tonight.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for the Chief of Staff? If not, I have a couple questions. So I'm curious about this Basic Needs Center. Can you tell us a bit where the funding source for this is coming from?
Yeah, so this is a collaboration between Student Affairs, Enrollment, and Student Aid and Scholarships. There was something similar to this in their budget pre-COVID and during COVID, but the earlier parts of COVID. And then it sort of dissipated because money was allocated towards emergency funding for broadband access for students as they were sent home. But this was something that is being funded by those three different departments, and it was a collaboration, I believe. After to give a bit more insight, what happened was after the financial literacy symposium in Charlotte, there was a budget due that Monday of the following week. So we were working to incorporate this into the budget and figure out what could happen with it and how it could be developed based off of incorporating UNC system goals and UNC goals in general as well. And it was put into the budget, and then they had their budget hearings and spoke about it and were questioned about it and all of that. And it was ultimately approved. I want to say, I'm not sure. It was recently, I want to say like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but it was recently approved, and now the next steps are being taken. But as Student Affairs, Student Aid and Scholarships, and Enrollment.
Is there any kind of timeline on implementation and rollout?
Yeah, so it's originally what we discussed was a 3-year rollout. Right now, what's going to happen? They're heading to a conference, and they being the Dean of Students and the Associate Provost for Student Aid and Scholarships, they're heading to a HEFWA conference, which is essentially focused on implementing a financial literacy and well-being program. And with that also encompassing the components of basic needs being food insecurity, housing insecurity, and also working to figure out how to incorporate the Carolina Emerging Fund with that. So based on my understanding, they're going to hope to recruit in some capacity and have a job posting by that time when they go to the conference, and hopefully hire someone and that be done by September or October. Obviously, in the hiring process, that is an ideal, but it's hard to give a specific timeline on that. But they're aiming to do September. August is even better, though. And then after that, working to plan for the rest of the year. So that's going to be one of the biggest components. The Dean of Students and the Associate Provost for student aid and scholarships have worked closely with each other for years. And the Dean of Students has been here, I believe, 11 years now. I can't remember how long the Associate Provost has been, but they've worked together for a long time, and they're going to sort of help to mold the director, but at the same time give them that autonomy to build that program in a way that is meaningful for UNC students, in leveraging basic needs and that all-encompassing financial literacy and well-being element. From there, over the next academic term, you'll start to see some rollout and some pilot programs and things of that nature. There's also talks about bringing in student fellows, because that was the initial plan when we were planning out this program at the Financial Literacy Symposium. We want to make sure that there are also students involved in many different capacities, but one of the biggest capacities being student fellows who are getting paid to do the work, and not necessarily just advise on a volunteer basis. So that will probably start to roll out at the end of the 2024 period, and then going into the summer, because there's going to be a lot of training, especially on that financial literacy piece, to help engage with students in that manner. And then you'll really start to see it pick up in that third year, in hopes that it has that solid foundation. One thing that we have going for us at UNC that Niner Finance didn't at UNC Charlotte was there's a bit more pushback on financial literacy at the time when they implemented it, but now that is not necessarily the case, especially considering those are UNC system goals. Those are North Carolina goals as well, in terms of incorporating financial literacy into the curriculum.
All right, and my last question is, when this budget was approved, what was the approximate breakdown in terms of the apportionment of resources? You said there were 4 different areas, so how are those funds going to be broken up proportionally?
So I'm not sure about that. When I said those 4 different areas being food insecurity, housing insecurity, the financial literacy and well-being, and the Carolina Emerging Fund, those are going to be the 4 main focuses. When you think of basic needs, you should think about those 4 things. I can see if I can get that information on the budget breakdown and what was appropriated and how it was appropriated. I don't have that information at this time, but in saying those 4 focus areas, that's essentially what you should think of. When you think of this center that's being developed, those 4 areas should be the focus. That's what you should think of.
All right. Thanks for all that information. Those are all the questions I have. If no one else has any other questions, we will move on to our report from the Director of State and External Affairs. All right. Let's see. Is Miriam here?
It's Mariam, and yes,
Sorry.
hi, I'm here. No, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, no, it's Mariam, but no worries. So, hello, hope everyone is doing well. I would turn my camera on, but I look horrible. So I'm gonna be straight up with you guys, or you all. So anyways, I just wanted to, I have very few updates to provide at this time. My first being that, Christopher, that's so sweet. Thank you. But my first being currently I've hired staff for the State and External Affairs Office. So we have a Deputy Director of State and Local Relations, as well as a Deputy Director of Legislative Affairs. I've also, along with Becca and Andrew, you as well, have been in on these meetings. We've been meeting with Joshua, and we've been trying to see if we can put together a partnership for between campus equality and student equity and State and External Affairs to have a bill tracker for bills that directly impact students. That's something that State and External Affairs has kind of been working on since last year. That's kind of rolling over in a way, because we do have a survey that we did last year with student input about specific issues as well. So we're trying to see if it's still a work in progress, but an update that deserves to be made. Along with that, I know President Everett mentioned in his update that we are currently working with the executive branch, the Office of State and External Affairs, to kind of provide an update as well as a summary of things that to be on the lookout for the upcoming term as far as policy and things go. I know you just mentioned, earlier we were talking about House Bill 574. That's something that we're kind of already like, we're trying to put together things in order to prepare. Obviously, like the Everett administration stands for accessibility and inclusivity for all. So that's kind of something that we're working on currently, is prepare and organizing all obviously like in a neurotypical manner. Yeah, okay, that's really it. That's all I have. I never know how to end these things. That's all. That's the updates that I have. Please ask me questions in order for me to clarify. I'm smarter on paper, so just letting everyone know. Sorry.
All right, does anyone have any questions for the SEA director? Chair McClanahan.
So we've actually previously mentioned in this meeting the voter ID laws that are currently going through they're currently going through. Does SEA have any plans regarding those?
So I had a brief conversation with Christopher Williams, COS, earlier in the week. As of right now, I know we discussed a potential social media push and platform, and as well as we obviously have discussed like a way for students to know that this is occurring in order to increase awareness, so that students are aware and able to vote as well. Obviously, knowing that like students are a primary concern. But yes, we do have there are talks in place. We have spoken about this as an executive branch as well as a SEA office. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, perfect.
Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for your report. Let's see, and our next report comes from the Undergraduate Student Attorney General. Is the USAG present? Is the Undergraduate Honor Court Chair present? Is the Undergraduate Honor Court Outreach Coordinator present? Okay, and we'll move on to our report from the Student Government Advisor. Does the Student Government Advisor have any report? All right, there were no papers addressed to the Senate and no one has requested time for a 2-minute speech, so we'll move on to public comment period. Is there any public comment at this time? Seeing no public comment, we will move on to our first item of business, which is from the unfinished business calendar, the approval of the minutes from the April 25th special meeting. Is there a motion with regards to this item?
Motion to adopt.
Second. Motion to adopt has been moved and seconded. Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the minutes from this April special meeting are adopted. We will now move on to our next item. Would someone move to add to the agenda a special order to consider committee assignments?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to add an item to the agenda. We will now enter public comment on the motion. Does anyone from the public have comment on adding this motion to the agenda? Seeing no public comment and seeing no objection, this item is added to the agenda, which I will present very briefly.
Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
At this time, I move to suspend the rules and by unanimous consent reorder the agenda, moving USR 105040 onto special orders below committee assignments.
Is there a second to reorder the agenda in the manner the chair described? Is there a second? All right, hearing a second, is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the agenda will be reordered as the chair described. I will briefly do that. Let's see, where is, all right. Okay. Let's see, I will now need to yield the chair temporarily. Let's see, is Atharva, are you still here? I do not hear anything from Atharva. So Chair McClanahan, you're next up in line of succession, so I'm willing to chair to you very briefly.
Thank you, Speaker.
Right. Let's see, I'm assuming I'm recognized to present this item.
You are.
Okay, so a little bit of background. So because the code tests and treasurer's tests, the first round of like due dates passed, there were a handful of individuals that did not pass one or both of those tests, which means that they are ineligible to serve on either the Rules and Judiciary Committee or the Finance Committee, which means we have to redo our committee assignments. This was kind of complicated because about half the Finance Committee did not pass the treasurer's test, which means that we had to move about 8 people off the Finance Committee. And this was not an easy process. So I have attached to the agenda a proposed slate of reassignments for the committees. Let's see, I'll link to it in the chat just to make sure everyone sees it. This proposal is not binding per the Senate standing rules. Technically speaking, like we have to hold elections to place people on committees, but I figured that people would rather avoid doing 45 elections to place people on committee assignments. So I drafted up this proposal that slotted everyone onto the committees with the least amount of disruption possible, ensuring that everyone on Finance Committee could vote and on R&J could also vote, but making sure the committees were all about the same size and also making sure that vice chairs didn't get reassigned. I'm going to move at this time to suspend the rules and adopt these assignments as the new committee assignments for the 105th Senate. Anyone is free to object. If the objection is sustained, we will then have to vote on committee assignments, and that I've never seen that happen in my time in Senate, but we'll figure it out basically. So
point of information.
Yes, or sorry.
Would it be would it be possible to vote on adopting all of these committee assignments as opposed to adopting each one individually? I know that personally I wouldn't mind the being reassigned, but I worry that it seems sort of a binary decision between either unanimous consent and nobody gets to vote, or we have to vote on each one individually. If it would be possible to have some sort of public
If the
or
chair
some sort of
may
vote.
mention how this would work. So my interpretation of this is a motion to redo the committee assignments as follows. If a Senate, it would be in order to raise an amendment to these committee assignments, and that would just need a simple majority to amend the motion. Passing the reassignments as such will require a 2/3 majority, just to be clear. If it was on the agenda properly in advance, it would only take a majority, but as we had to add it to the agenda, it takes 2/3.
Understood. In that case, I don't object.
Yeah, so I'm making the motion to adopt this as proposed, and I would actually invite, like, if anyone does object to these assignments, that you do so, because I don't think we'll be changing them again after this meeting.
And if you object, we just move into discussion, and we won't have to like do 40 elections. We're not going to do that. Don't worry.
Yeah, like we'll find a way around that.
Can you say again where the was it in the chat or was it?
It's in the chat and it's on the agenda.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
You're recognized.
If a senator was moved to the Finance Committee, and would then need a 90% on the treasurer's test, but obtained an 80%, how would that work, considering senators were moved off the Finance Committee for not obtaining a 90%?
Finance doesn't take 90% unless you did it too late. Are there any further questions or objections?
wait, another point of information. Sorry. I'm not sure I understood the response to Senator Adams' question. Would senators who, for example, got between an 80 and a 90 on the finance test, who were then reassigned to finance, would they be able to vote on finance legislation if they did not receive above a 90%?
Yes, they would.
Okay, understood.
Provided that you have passed the finance test, which is either you got an 80% in the first 2 weeks, or you got a 90% in the 6 weeks afterwards, which is still going to right now. You are considered to have passed the finance test, and that would not be a problem. That is a question. That is an open question with regards to the code test, though, as that has a requirement.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add the requirements for the treasurer's test and the code test are not the same. Like the rule for that says that if you have to be on R&J, you need a 90% doesn't apply in the case of the finance committee.
So I have another question if I'm recognized. So were people also moved between committees to even them out, even if the committee they were already on, they passed the appropriate test for?
Let's see. So I think the way that it ended up working out was that the way that I did it was I started with the finance committee people who couldn't serve on finance and moved them as much as possible to O&A and R&J. And anyone on R&J who didn't pass got moved to either finance or O&A. So I think maybe 1 or 2 people got moved because the numbers needed to be evened out, but it ended up working out pretty well in the end.
I was going to say, I thought I passed the treasurer's test, but got moved off finance, and I'm fine being reassigned to R&J, but I was just wondering.
Yeah, like it got really tough towards the end to make the numbers work out. Just there were a couple people that had to get moved just because the numbers were weird.
All right. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah.
If there are no further objections or questions, it would be in order to move to suspend the rules and pass this by unanimous consent.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Are there any objections to the reorganization of committees?
Objection.
That was Senator Adams, correct?
Yes.
All right. There is an objection to passing the proposed assignments by unanimous consent. As the motion was a motion to pass by unanimous consent, it does not continue further. We are still in discussion. Senator Adams, if you would like to speak, you are recognized.
I do not have anything to add at this time.
Are there any further points, motions, or discussion on the floor at this time? Senator Vernon, you are recognized.
I'm a bit confused about why there was an objection. If Senator Adams wouldn't mind expounding upon that, just because, you know, we all want to get out of this meeting, so objecting without explanation isn't very helpful.
Senator Adams, if you would like to respond, you may.
I don't have anything to respond. Sorry.
I move to call the question.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Is there an objection to the previous question? Seeing none, the motion carries by unanimous consent. We will now proceed into a roll call vote. Give me 1 second. Let me put this in. As a reminder, the question is on the The question is on the motion to reorganize the committee assignments as proposed by Speaker Gary. Vote yes if you want to reorganize the committee assignments, and vote no if you do not wish to reorganize the committee assignments. As a reminder, this motion takes a 2/3 majority to pass. We'll now proceed to voting. Senator Hagan.
Yes.
Senator Henson.
No.
Senator Yen. Taylor, are you there?
Oh, sorry. Could you repeat what yes and no was again? Sorry.
Vote yes if you would like to reassign committees as proposed by Speaker Gary, and vote no if you do not want to reassign committees as proposed by Speaker Gary.
No reassignment, just whatever was on the Google Doc.
You're voting no to reassignments?
No, or no to your thing.
Okay, that is a no. Senator Pierce?
Yes.
Speaker Gary?
Yes.
Senator Kim?
Yes.
Senator Stanton?
Yeah.
Senator Forbes?
Yes.
Senator Jones?
Yes.
Senator Vernon?
Yes.
Senator Wilson?
Yes.
Senator McDermott? Senator McDermott? Senator McDermott?
Yeah.
Senator Nandori? Senator Nandori? Senator Nandori? Senator does not appear to be in the participants list. Senator Smith?
No.
Senator Langley?
Yes.
Senator Aurora? Senator Aurora? Sanvi, are you still not in the participants list? I don't vote since I'm presiding. Senator Schneider? Senator Schneider is not here. Chair Vespute? Not here. Senator Adams?
No.
Chair Baruch? Chair Baruch? Senator Leonard?
Yes.
Are there any senators who are present and have not been called on?
I have not been called on.
Who is that?
Womble.
Senator Senator Womble, how do you vote?
No.
Alrighty. Are there any further senators whose names have not been called? Seeing none, by a vote of 12 to 5 to 0, this motion reaches the requisite 2/3 majority and thereby carries. The committees are reassigned as proposed by Speaker Gary. The chair is now returned.
Thank you, Chair McClanahan, for handling that. All right. See, those new assignments I'll email out to everyone and the chairs after the meeting. They'll go into effect starting immediately, just so that way finance committee can get started on their work, as I know they are a little behind at the moment. Let's see, with that, we'll move on to our next special order, USR 105040, a resolution to confirm an undergraduate justice of the Student Supreme Court. Let's see, Vice President Siegel, are you introducing this nominee?
Yes, I can go ahead and speak a little bit, and then I would also love to give the nominee a chance to speak for herself. So if I'm recognized, I worked with Senator McClanahan, with Chair McClanahan, and the entire Undergraduate Student Supreme Court Selection Committee to recommend Caroline Hoover to you all to serve as an undergraduate justice on the Student Supreme Court. Caroline is a wonderful nominee. She has the full support of myself and of President Everett. We are incredibly excited about her application and her ability to successfully carry out the duties of serving on the court. With that, if the speaker would recognize Caroline so she can have an opportunity to speak, that would be wonderful.
All right, Caroline, you are recognized.
Well, hello, everyone. I know it's pretty late at night, so I'll just keep this brief. I'm very excited to be nominated to be back on the court. I actually did serve on the court for my freshman year until my junior fall, and then I studied abroad in London. And stipulated by the Constitution, it stated that a justice may not spend more than a semester away from the university and maintain that role. And so just from a conservative viewing of that specific ruling, I wanted to make sure the court had enough justices to have quorum. And I've seen how negative it can be when there's not 5 justices serving. So I went ahead and removed myself for the semester with the full intent of hopefully coming back. And now I'm excited to be able to have that opportunity. Just to give a little bit of background on me, I've had some pretty extensive experience working directly with the law. I was an investigator for Georgetown Law's criminal justice clinic. So I spent a lot of time out in the field taking homicide statements from witnesses, working directly for clients, and kind of developing my understanding not only of legal precedent, but applying it directly to cases with an ethical lens. And I also led a national healthcare research organization under the Office of Rural Health and the National Patient Advocacy Foundation, where I interpreted the Social Security Act and several other very dense materials, kind of like our code, that allowed me to understand how different legal rulings in Medicare disproportionately affect certain populations, specifically people of color and low-income residents of rural areas. So I'm very passionate about utilizing the law to advocate for people. And I hope that I can do that as an undergraduate justice. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is where questions happen or what, but I don't want to talk for too long since it's so late.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for the nominee? And if there are no questions, is there a motion?
Motion to suspend the rules and adopt by unanimous consent.
Second.
Hearing no objection, the item is adopted by unanimous consent. Congratulations, Caroline Hoover. As I'm sure you know, you have to go through JGC, and Matthew tells me that it's going to be soon. So hopefully that won't take too long.
I've done it before, so I do know that. Well, thank you all. Please feel free to contact me at any time. I just want to say before signing off, having served on the court, it's really important to me this coming school year, if I am to be fully confirmed, that there's more communication specifically about what's going on in the Senate and in the executive branch in general. So please feel free to always email me. I'm happy to speak with anyone about anything that you might have questions about, how the court can better serve not only the student body, but make sure that there's ethical rulings within the government. So I hope you all have a great night. Goodbye.
All right, with that, is there a motion out of the committee of the whole?
So moved.
Second.
And hearing no objection, we are now entering the committee of the whole. Does someone wish to volunteer to preside over the committee of the whole?
If no one wants to, I'll do it with a suspension if you want.
Yeah. Is there a motion to suspend the rules so that Chair McClanahan can preside over the committee of the whole?
So
So
moved.
moved.
All right, hearing no
Seconded.
objection, I am yielding the chair to Chair McClanahan.
Thank you, Speaker Gary. We are now in Committee of the Whole, so we will proceed to the consideration of USR 105-046, a resolution to confirm a member of the Building and Grounds Committee, specifically Max Nelson. Will the Vice President be presenting a nominee?
Yes, I will.
The Vice
And I
President
think
is
I will need
recognized.
thank you. A little bit of help here from Speaker Gary. So Max Nelson, who's the nominee, served on the Buildings and Grounds Committee last year. He also appeared before ONA during their last committee meeting, and is not available to come tonight because he appeared in front of ONA. But I've worked with Max before. He's fantastic. He'll be a returning appointee, so he has full experience. The chair of this committee was excited about the prospect of him returning, so I checked in with him, and it sounds like he did a really wonderful job last year of being super, super engaged. So Max has expressed interest to myself and to President Everett to return to this committee. He appeared before ONA and also provided testimony, and I highly encourage you all to support his candidacy to serve on the Buildings and Grounds Committee for the 2023-2024 academic year. And I'm happy to answer any questions on his behalf.
At this time, are there any questions for the Vice President?
If I can be recognized to kind of explain what's going on real briefly.
Speaker is recognized.
Thank you. So what happened is ONA heard all the 4 nominees that are listed on the calendar for Committee of the Whole. But what happened is there are no minutes from that meeting in the Senate Drive, which means that there's no record of how any of those nominees were reported. All the nominees, to my recollection, were either reported favorably or without prejudice in some way. And I can attest to that, as I was at that meeting. But because there are no minutes, I cannot, per the undergraduate code, place them on the general or consent calendar. So we have to go through the procedural mechanism of using the Committee of the Whole to deal with this situation. So I do urge you to approve these nominees. They were already screened by ONA, and they are eminently qualified, in my opinion.
At this time, we are out of question. We are done with questions. We are now in discussion. Are there any points, motions, or discussion on the floor at this time? Knowing the situation, the chair reminds senators that it is possible to suspend the rules and pass multiple things at the same time. That being said, are there any points, motions, or discussions on the floor at this time?
I move to combine the question, suspend the rules, and report USRs 105-046 through 105-049 favorably.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Is there an objection? Without objection. All four items on the Committee of the Whole agenda have been combined and been reported favorably onto the consent calendar. The Committee of the Whole is thereby done with considerations. At this time, is there a motion to exit Committee of the Whole?
So moved.
So moved.
Without objection. Speaker Gary?
Thank you, Chair McClanahan, for handling that. With that, we are now in line for the consent calendar. Is there a motion with regards to the consent calendar?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
There is a motion to adopt the consent calendar. No objection. The consent calendar is adopted. We are now moving on to the general orders calendar. Our first item being USR 105-030, a resolution to confirm a co-director of student wellness and safety. Let's see, Chief of Staff Williams, do you want to introduce the nominee?
Yes, 1 second. I am happy to introduce Harini for confirmation to the position of Student Wellness, Co-Director for Student Wellness and Safety. Harini has been nominated by the executive branch, possesses the qualities and qualifications necessary to serve our student body effectively. As Chief of Staff, I've had the privilege of interviewing and beginning to work closely with Harini, and I'm confident that her dedication, integrity, and passion for student welfare stands out as we work to implement President Everett's platform of a Carolina for everyone. Harini has demonstrated outstanding leadership skills and a deep commitment to promoting the interests and well-being of our diverse student community. I wholeheartedly endorse Harini for the position of co-director for student wellness and safety. I urge each of you to carefully consider her nomination, recognize the immense potential she possesses to contribute to the welfare and success of our student body, and act to confirm. I am happy to answer any questions.
And does our nominee want to say anything?
Sure, I'll say a couple words. My name is Harini. I'm a health policy and management major, and I'm a junior. Last year, I served up for the Vann administration in the capacity of the Director of Institutional Research and Assessment. And I'm really excited to potentially serve in the student wellness and safety role. And some of the initiatives that me and my co-director are hoping to pursue this year are reestablishing the Mental Health Coalition and making it an independent entity, supporting pre-existing campus organizations, including organizations in the Campus Y, that are already doing a lot of the work that we hope to do, and working with the IFC to implement sexual violence and substance abuse education. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the nominee? If there are no questions, is there a motion?
Motion to suspend the rules and pass by unanimous consent.
Second.
All right, hearing no objection to the motion, the resolution is adopted by unanimous consent. Congratulations to our nominee. We will now move on to our next item, USR 105043, a resolution to propose the creation of a food insecurity fee. At this time, Senator Alexander is recognized.
Senator Alexander is not here if you look at the participants.
Well, that makes sense. Let's see, does any of the other co-sponsors wish to introduce this? If no one wishes to introduce this,
Mr. Speaker, if you like, having been intimately, if I may be recognized, if you like, during discussion, I would be happy to answer questions on this.
I'll extend speaking privileges to the treasurer.
Second.
You're recognized.
Okay, so this is the culmination of a discussion which has been had in various student government circles for over a year now, on both the graduate and undergraduate side. The food insecurity issue on campus is quite pernicious, and there is broad agreement that more needs to be done to provide resources against it. This issue in particular has been a pet project of mine for some time. We've explored a variety of avenues through which funds may be provided for this. There's a few things we want out of these funds. We want them to be stable, recurring, consistent, etc. We want them to be able to support a high quality program which can combat food insecurity. Principally, the best method to doing that is providing people with food. So our campus food bank, Carolina Cupboard, is very well-meaning, but it has limited capacity. Last fall, they served less than 60 people. For context, they served less than 60 people. 23% of UNC's 30,000 students are food insecure. So we need a bigger splash, and we should be competing with our peers in this regard. So there's a few models, but the highest quality food banks are essentially university run and sponsored, or receive institutional support, which Carolina Cupboard does not. So Feed the Pack over at NC State, they survive on about $100 to $150 in funding a year. The idea here is to create a fee which will provide about $120,000 a year in recurring funding. That would go to a student-run food bank organization, or really, text of it is that a student-run organization dedicated to addressing food insecurity. The idea being that would be a food bank. So yeah, that's the idea. It's $4 per student. I think that's an eminently reasonable proposal. I think a $4, to help out your fellow Tar Heel is a fair ask of the student body. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer questions on this. This is pretty momentous. The Senate does not often approve fees, and under the current Constitution of 2017, to my knowledge, it's only happened once. So think carefully about it, and please do ask questions.
All right, thank you, Treasurer Grutsky, for stepping up. Yeah, we'll now move into questions.
I have a question for Treasurer Grutsky. Just out of curiosity, how much money would be allotted for the food insecurity with the $4 per student fee?
Yeah, so assuming we have roughly, give or take, 30,000 students enrolled at UNC, that would be $120,000 per year. There are other avenues to provide additional funds, including fundraising. Feed the Pack can typically raise $10,000 to $30,000 a year. So, yeah, that ultimately we would want an organization with a budget of about $150,000 that would allow them to hire professional staff to support the food bank operations. It would allow them to buy prepared foods, which are hot foods are much more effective at fighting food insecurity for a plethora of reasons. The fee proposal is purposefully broad, because we are dealing with a very uncertain administrative environment, and that comes from the BOG level down. So it's designed to be broad, to provide the fee for a purpose, and then to allow a future BOT, a future administration, to direct those funds as appropriate. Let me know if that answered your question, if you'd like follow-up.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Are there any motions?
Motion to adopt by unanimous consent.
Second.
Motion to adopt by unanimous consent. Hearing no objection, USR 105-043 is adopted by unanimous consent. Just to kind of let y'all know a little bit about the process, very briefly, this will go up for review by the Joint Governance Council at their next meeting. Presuming it is passed, there will be a referendum to create the fee, likely in the fall, but could be in the spring. That referendum will require a majority vote of 2.5% of the student body to be adopted, at which point my understanding of the process gets a little confused, because I'm not really an expert in how the fee review process from the Board of Governors down works. But just be aware, this is the beginning of a very long and very drawn out process, and I would expect there to be a lot of updates and continued discussions surrounding a proposed student fee. But with that, we'll move on to our next item of business, USR 105-044, a resolution to commemorate Pride Month. I'll recognize this resolution's sponsor, Senator Vernon.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this resolution is fairly straightforward. It's a resolution to commemorate Pride Month, as the title suggests, but it also calls on various university leaders to take steps to improve life on campus for LGBTQ students, including expanding physical spaces for them and other such policies. So if you have any questions, I invite you to ask them, but I think it's a great resolution, and I think, of course, it's very timely.
All right, thank you, Senator Vernon. Are there any questions about this resolution?
Motion to adopt by unanimous consent.
Second.
All right, motion is to adopt by unanimous consent. Hearing no objection, USR 105-044 is adopted by unanimous consent. Let's see, and with that, that brings us to our last agenda item for the day. Let's see, if you are a member of the cabinet, it is time for y'all to be sworn in. Since y'all's offices are subject to impeachment, you're required to swear the oath of office. So at this time, if you are a member of the cabinet, please either like with your camera on, raise your right hand, or like raise your Zoom hand, though I would prefer you do so with your camera on. All right. And at this time, please repeat after me. I state your full name. Let's see, wait, can y'all, let's see, yeah. So repeat after me. I state your full name. Oh,
I believe some members are muted.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if y'all could unmute yourself so we can hear, like we have to hear y'all say it, unfortunately.
I, Jakob Lemma.
I, Crystal Lakayo.
I, Cecilia.
Hi, Ryan Smith.
I, Isha Bynum.
Do affirm that I will preserve, protect, and defend.
Do affirm that I will preserve,
protect, and defend
the general welfare of the student body.
The general welfare of the student body.
At the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
At the University of North Carolina
at Chapel Hill.
And its Constitution.
And its Constitution.
And all laws enacted under its authority.
And all laws enacted under its authority.
Congratulations, y'all have been officially sworn in as cabinet directors. And this brings us to any notices and announcements. Does anyone have any announcements?
Yeah, I do have an announcement. If you are a this is more to Ebo. If any cabinet members have not been sworn in, they just need to have the oath administered by the president. And per the joint code, that is acceptable. That's all.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other announcements? Let's see, my only announcement is that our next meeting is going to be on Zoom in July. It will be on July 18th at 7:30 p.m. If there are no other announcements, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Hearing no objection, we stand adjourned at 9:03 p.m. Thank you all for coming and hope you have a good rest of your